For my video, I will be looking at week 7, which looks at the cultural and cognitive roots of intergroup cognition. The articles by Metzoff looking at infants' imitative choices in social referencing, Duhan, Barron, and Carey's work on the impact of minimal groups, and Sheriff's well-known camp study give us valuable insights into how groups are formed, how minimal groups can influence our decision, and how intergroup biases quickly become present if we put these minimal groups in a competitive setting. While these studies give us a foundation for understanding how groups are formed, they don't inform us about what moderates this relationship or how these intergroup biases can be overcome. I'm most interested if empathy is induced, will competitors sacrifice their own rewards to promote fairness? Scaresman, Tyson, Verk conducted a study to investigate if inducing empathic understanding is an effective intervention for overpowering peer group boundaries in children's helping behavior. And to accomplish this, they studied a group of kids aged 8 to 13 years old and read them stories and asked them various questions about the characters within the stories. They found that children in general intended to help. However, if they were asked questions that induced empathic understanding, they were more likely to say they would provide the character help in the story. One situation that children can recognize and typically choose to act in is in the cases of fairness. McCauffill, Jordan, and Warnikin were interested in this phenomenon and conducted a study on 5 and 6-year-olds to investigate whether they would participate in costly punishment. The study revolved around resource allocation and found that children would sacrifice personal gain to prevent unfair distribution of reward. They also found that 6-year-olds were more likely to intervene in cases of unfairness if it was due to selfishness rather than generosity. While there is data to support that children are more likely to help if they are primed to think with empathy and are willing to sacrifice their own gains to promote fairness, it is curious whether this relationship is context-specific. Scaresman conducted a different study aimed at the context of helping behavior. Much research has shown that helping behavior decreases as the costs increase. However, few take into account who is being helped. Scaresman studied a group of children aged 8 to 13 years old and read stories with characters that conveyed ethnic in- and out-group people. She found that the context did have some effect, as the children would help their ethnic in-group in all situations, but would not help ethnic out-group if the costs were high. From synthesizing the works of these authors, we know a few things. That we form and identify with groups really, really easily. That empathy plays some sort of role in facilitating that cooperation. That children are willing to sacrifice their own rewards to punish unfairness and to promote fairness in some cases. And that the context of helping the out group can be context specific. And these all play into my question of interest. If inducing empathy in children would influence them to forgo reward in a competitive context. My proposed study involves multiple steps, as I need to accomplish a few things to answer this research question. I need to establish group membership and to provide an intergroup context, so we have both groups. I need to have competition to create that specific context that doesn't make the kids making the decisions a neutral third party, but rather they're helping a co-competitor. And this will also influence a stronger sense of group membership, that as it can be seen in Sheriff's study of the boys in the summer camp. And I will also then have to manipulate empathy in some way between the experimental and control group. Then give the subjects an opportunity to sacrifice their reward, whatever that may be, for the sake of fairness. And if that context is created, I would hypothesize that children would sacrifice their own reward to promote fairness if empathy is induced. For my proposed study, I will recruit approximately 20 children of both sexes from swim clubs aged 8 to 10 years old. The reason for this choice of subjects is that children aged 8 to 10 show behaviors peripheral to my research based on the works I mentioned prior, and were typically the age range that was the subjects of research for those works. So it would be reasonable to believe the phenomena present with them would also be present with this group. Um, the experiment also involves swimming, and in BC, children have to be aged 7 to swim on their own, as well as that's the age that they are comfortable in the full-length pool and compete in races. But that is the group of kids, and these children will be randomly assigned to the control group and the experimental group. The experimental group will be told to come to the pool where the red team's coach, who is actually an experimental, will read out names of people and assign either a red swim cap or a blue swim cap to the child. All of the children who are assigned the red swim cap will be in the experimental group, and the blue swim cap team will consist of Confederates, or child actors, which I so gracefully ran into a bunch of 10-year-old swimming child actors, which is nice for this experiment. They will then be informed that they will all participate in a relay race against the other team. Then they will have individual meetings with the coach to talk about how the race went. Following, they will have they will be told that they will have another race, this time with flippers on, and the people of the winning team will get to keep goggles. Will get goggles as a prize. The team of Confederates will be told to lose in both the experimental condition and the control condition. And in the experimental condition, the Confederates will act very upset after losing the initial race and cry. And crying, as shown by Catherine and Shauna Reichel, is an effective way of inducing empathy. The swimmers will then go in one by one and have an interview with the coach, where the experimenter will inform them that the blue team coach has forgot to bring the flippers for their team. And they will have two options. They can either have another race without flippers for fun, or they can race the blue team with their flippers and get the prize if they win. So, to the kids, they can either forego what would be a guaranteed reward in an unfair race, or they can race for fun with their outgroup peers. After the meeting, depending on whatever answer they give, doesn't matter, they will be released back to their parents outside through a different door outside the view of the other children's waiting for their interview with the coach / experimenter, and the experiment would conclude. The experiment in the control condition would run exactly the same, except after losing the first race, the blue team, which is the one consisting of Confederates, will act neutral / happy rather than crying. Based on my hypothesis, if I were to conduct this study and my hypothesis were correct, I would expect children to forego their reward for the sake of fairness more than 50% of the time in the experimental condition, and also show a certain amount of that in the control condition, but less often. Given McCaufel et al.'s work with children foregoing the rewards if they felt there was unfairness in distribution, I believe I accomplished that in my experiment, and in the team being interviewed, the ones that had just won the race, without the advantage of having flippers on. If they were to race again with the advantage of having flippers, the children, who are all from swim clubs, would know that they would win the race for sure. It wouldn't even be close if they just won before and now they get to use flippers, which make you go way faster. That they would have an extreme unfair advantage in the situation. They had also just witnessed the other kids cry. They were so upset that they lost. And as Scaresman et al. Found, inducing empathy contributes to helping out group members. However, the later work by Scaresman did find that it is context-specific, but saying that due to the empathic priming and the unfair situation that the kids would be faced with, I don't believe that they would act selfishly. And I think the research supports that they would not act selfishly. And if my findings were true, they would have some implications for our understanding of empathy and how it may interact in a competitive environment. It may support changing how we organize games that are supposed to be for fun, or sporting events that are meant for fun rather than your top tier sporting competitive events in maybe camp or school settings, to avoid that sort of intergroup conflict that was present in Sheriff et al. Study with the eagles and the rattlesnakes, where they were jarring, they had name calling, and it escalated quite frequently. And rather to promote cooperation. So if promoting empathy in children affords them the cognitive ability to cooperate with their co-competitors, there may be some sort of underlying phenomena that will reveal some aspect of human nature and possibly contribute to better development for these kids to form them into adults that may be able to handle world conflicts better, or work better with people that they feel are the outgroups, as long as we teach them those empathic ways of understanding. But yeah, thank you.